was going to record this um, on the mainland, not on the Isle of Wight, but my computer didn't work this morning. So I've had to head back home quickly to record this. And I've been on the mainland, been to London to do an interview with London Real, which is a very, very good operation, and to talk about the coronavirus. And in the first 24 hours after it was broadcast live, it got more than 1 million hits, which shows you something, that not everyone is buying the official story of this coronavirus. And I'm going to explore some areas of it today. But I want to start with, a confirmation of the kind of mentality that's involved in politics, that is asking us to believe that it cares about us and it cares about old people. See, old people and those with other medical conditions, the common denominator being a weakened immune system, are being used as an excuse to shut down the world economy and to in effect, put vast numbers of people under house arrest eventually, not even eventually in some countries. And these are the same people who have treated old people disgustingly, have overseen a system that has so many old people choosing between a a meal or warmth because they can't afford both. And now this same system is telling us that we must shut down the world economy to protect old people. Um, Now, when you're dealing with people lower down the system, be they nurses or doctors or whatever, and all the rest of them, they will, most of them anyway. I've met some doctors who don't, but most of them will care about their patients and will care about the elderly. But I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about those that run the system, especially those deep in the shadows who wouldn't know empathy if it smacked him in the face. And this is the story. I've just sat down and seen this story on davidicke.com. Republican Jim Inhofe, it's called Inhofe. I did check the pronunciation. That's what they said it was. Jim Inhofe dumped up to $450,000 in stock. The fourth senator implicated in the scandal. The Republican Senate caucus faced a massive scandal after multiple senators revealed in public filings that they had sold large stock holdings after private briefings on the coronavirus scandal. So they care. They care about the old people. Senator Richard Burr, Senator Kelly Loeffler, and Senator Ron Johnson have all been implicated in the scandal. And now conservative Oklahoma Senator Jim Inhofe has been caught up after reporting that he sold his stock in late February. There have been calls for them to resign. Well, those calls should not be necessary. So we need to get past the idea that the system and those that run it care about the elderly or care about people with, quote, pre-existing health problems that are um, overwhelmingly the ones that face danger from this coronavirus, whatever it turns out to be. And 80%, this is the official figure coming out of the medical profession. 80% of people who get this virus um, have, and this is the quote, very mild symptoms. The vast majority of the rest have what they call moderate symptoms, and that leaves this few that are in danger, in life danger from this virus. And it would be possible to cocoon those vulnerable people, to fire your resources at that group and keep them away as much as possible from the virus, and let those that will only have, even if they get it, very mild symptoms and at most moderate symptoms, let them get on with running the economic system. Because what we're facing here is economic catastrophe, and the legacy of this coronavirus is actually not going to be the virus. It's going to be the response to it, and its demolishing of the economic system. An economic system which is, I've been writing now for decades. This cult that I say absolutely is behind what's going on has had a long time ambition to create an economic catastrophe so that it can replace the current economic system with its own that's been long planned, just sitting there waiting. And it will be based on AI, and it will be based on digital, and it will be part of this smart grid. And another thing that they want to do, see, with AI taking vast numbers of jobs from people, and we've seen so much of it, but a fraction of what's coming. And then you add this economic shutdown as a result of this coronavirus all over the world. The question is asked, how are those people who have no jobs, how are they going to survive? Well, they want a big reduction in the population for a start. And the ones they're targeting are old people. This has been in my books for years. And here we have this virus, which is threatening, life-threatening, only to old people, or overwhelmingly to old people, and to those with pre-existing conditions, which is taking all their immune system resources to start with before being hit with this. And so the question is, how do people survive? And what I've been pointing out is that the plan is to have a guaranteed income paid by the government every month. And this guaranteed income will be very small and put people only in a survival mode in terms of money and lifestyle. That's why I call this plan the Hunger Games Society. And this will come with strings. The strings are, we will pay you this guaranteed income. And by the way, if you turn it down and you want to earn your own income, just could you explain how you're going to do it? AI is taking the jobs. The economy is in a catastrophic state because of the coronavirus. What are you going to do? So have this guaranteed income, but it comes, like I say, with strings. While you behave the way the government state wants, you will get the guaranteed income. But if you start acting in ways that the state doesn't want, then you're going to lose that guaranteed income, or there's going to be penalties. And this is connected into this whole smart grid. If you look at China, which is the blueprint for the West, where they want the West to go, you have millions of face recognition cameras in the cities, and they are tracking people in China in real time, second by second. And AI is logging their behavior. And they have a thing called the social credit system. And if you behave the way the government wants, you are given social credits by the system. If you don't behave as demanded, you lose social credits. And there comes a point where you fall below a certain amount and consequences kick in. And we've had, I was writing about this in the trigger, we have had millions of Chinese people banned from flying and banned from even going on a train because their credits have fallen too low because they've not behaved the way the state wants them to behave. So this whole smart grid and the connecting of everything to the internet and artificial intelligence, including the human brain, is all connected to this guaranteed income because you behave as we want you to, or the guaranteed income goes. And like I say, where else are you going to get any income from? This is the game. And here we have now, as a result of this coronavirus hysteria, suggestions beginning to mount that we need some kind of guaranteed income because of all the economic upheaval that's going on, people losing their jobs. I mean, when you tell people not to go to pubs and restaurants and bars and hotels, well, whether that's justified or not, if you are cocooning those in danger, the outcome is obvious. Those businesses are going to go under in very large numbers, and the jobs are going to be lost. It's already happening. I was in a hotel last night in Dorset, in the south of England, where I was just staying. And I went in the restaurant, and I was the only person, a big restaurant, and I was the only person there. And after I'd had my dinner, I went across to the bar, and at the bar were the two owners, the chef, who'd only had me to cater for, and one single customer sitting there with his pint of beer. And we obviously got into the subject, which is fundamentally affecting them. And the one of the owners said that he owned about three businesses, and in the next 3 weeks he was going to lose alone £150,000 because no one was coming. Not because they didn't want to, but because they were told not to. And when I went up to London Real, I've been to London so many times. I worked there for a long time. I've seen London, over decades and decades and decades. But it was bizarre going on Wednesday. I walked out of the station. First of all, the train was virtually empty. I then walk out into the big concourse at Waterloo Station in London, which is usually packed with people, and there was just a few stragglers. I then go and get a cab to London Real, and the line of cabs waiting for customers was, I've never seen anything like it. And the guy who took me said he'd been sitting there for 4 hours waiting to get to the front of the line so he could get a customer. And what's going to happen to those people? They're going to go out of business. Well, that'd be good for Uber, which has billions of dollars pumped into it and keeps losing vast amounts of money, but in doing so is creating step by step a global monopoly. And that monopoly is in preparation for autonomous cars, because that's the whole business model of Uber, is to end up with autonomous cars and basically a global monopoly on it. And everywhere I went was just either like, not quite like a ghost town. There were some people, but the numbers were tiny compared with what you would normally see. And that's before the pressure was increased again by the government in Britain, as it's happening around the world, um, for people to stay at home and not go out. And that's going to keep being ramped up and get more and more severe. Because, as I said in the London Real interview, this is going to be run on until the cult believes, because that's what's behind it. You see prime ministers like Boris Johnson, and I watch the body language of Boris Johnson, and I hear some of his comments. I don't think for a minute he thinks all this is necessary. He didn't think it was necessary to stop all the soccer program, but so much pressure is on him from the system, from the permanent government, to go down this road. Um, and So it happens. And in the whole area, even of professional sport, clubs of whichever sport it is are going to be going under, because you can't pay your professional players if no one's coming through the door to watch them play, because there aren't any doors to come through, because it's all suspended. I mean, it's it, it's catastrophic what is happening to the world economy, and it's being done on purpose. And this cult will push this until it reaches the point and makes an assessment. This is now so bad that we are going to get widespread support for what we suggest should happen, and that will be a transformation of the global economy and the world. You know, I'm sitting here and I'm looking at a world that is changing so fast because of this, and it will never be the same again. And that's exactly why it's happening. And it's also interesting that where it is said to have started in China, they seem to have flatlined. The cases now, apparently, if you believe them, are minimal, and their economy is starting um, to ramp up again. So you've got a China, and I say that's the blueprint for the world, um, that is going to come out of this, the way things look now, far, far earlier than the rest of the world, and will be in a position to um, to buy up, for instance, great chunks of the Western economy. It's already doing it, even without this, at knockdown prices. And when you think something like 96% of antibiotics used in America are sourced from China, and something 90 odd percent of all drug ingredients. It's madness, and but there's method in the madness, because what the corporations owned by the cult have been doing is moving production to China decade after decade and giving China control of the Western economy. That's what it's done. And it's done it on purpose, because the cult doesn't have borders. The cult will be controlling China as it's controlling America, as it's controlling Britain from the shadows. And thus, um, governments are reflecting that in their actions. You see, once you release a virus, it basically takes on a momentum of its own and a life of its own. As people react to it, and if you can increase the fear and hysteria, then you know that the way governments respond through politicians who haven't got a clue, they're just being advised by dark suits administrators. You know that what's happening will will um, will happen and gather momentum. This is why this 1%, big time 1% organization, the World Economic Forum, meets at Davos every year. That the organization that's promoted into world stardom, Greta Thunberg. And what do the climate cult demand? A transformation of the world economic system, just coming from the same direction, from the same source. And so the World Economic Forum and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation ran this simulation 6 weeks before it became public that this virus in China. And what they were discussing and how things would pan out is exactly how it's panned out, even down to the nature of the simulated news broadcast they put into this so-called event. And I've mentioned, I've got a copy of a 2010 uh, report document by the Rockefeller Foundation, which is like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, just a front for this whole deal. And this document runs a series of scenarios and what would happen in different scenarios. And one of them is a pandemic. And what it talks about and what would happen and where it would come from, etc., um, is how it's panning out. It talks about the fact that China would impose draconian measures to meet the virus, and as a result, would recover quicker, and people would praise China for their draconian actions, which is exactly what's happening. Whereas the West, democracy, West, would not react in that way immediately, but eventually would. And that's what we're seeing. And so, this situation that we're facing is not an accident, it's by design. You can't pick any situation that ticks more boxes in terms of what this cult wants to do with the world than this pandemic and those like it. So now let's just ask a few questions about this. See, like I say, the overwhelming vast majority of people that get this virus are not going to die. They're not. 80% very mild symptoms or no symptoms, by the way. And or the people that are in danger are those that are old and their immune system is weak. I'll come to that in a minute, and those that have pre-existing conditions. And this is a story from Italy. It would seem that Italy is being targeted with this. Italy and Iran being targeted with this in a much more virulent way than the rest of the world up to this point. And this is the headline: 99% of patients killed by coronavirus in Italy had existing illnesses, new study finds. Research into the 355 deaths found that only 0.8%, had no other illnesses. Nearly half of them, 48.5%, already had 3 or even more health conditions. Another 25.6% had 2 other, quote, pathologies, while 25.1% had 1 other illness. So that's bloody clear what we're looking at. You know, honest doctors who know what they're talking about, that's nothing like the all of them, I tell you. They point out that this virus, or any virus, doesn't kill you. Your immune system does. And it does it through something called a cytokine storm. The reason that the vast majority get mild symptoms or moderate symptoms, smaller number, is because their immune system sorts it out. And so if you have a strong immune system, or at least one working efficiently, it will sort it out. But when those frontline levels of the immune system are weak and can't sort it out, then basically the immune system, as a last resort, in effect panics, and it unleashes from the cells substances called cytokines in a vast number to, in desperation, try to fight off what other levels of the immune system have failed to do, but absolutely would in a strong immune system. And with coronavirus, according to the way it's mainstream, this cytokine storm is targeted at the lungs, and it creates inflammation in the lungs, gunge in the lungs, and this leads to pneumonia. And so it's not the virus that kills people directly, it's the immune system's response to it. And I'm hearing, these governments and doctors representing the government who are saying that these groups, old people and those with pre-existing conditions, are dying because of weak immune systems. I've personally, you may have heard something. I have not heard anybody say, so therefore, this is what you need to do to boost your immune system. Vitamin A, vitamin D3, vitamin C, something to boost the thyroid that produces vitamin A. These things are crucial to increasing the strength of the immune system. Immune systems, by the way, that are systematically weakened and dismantled from birth by an explosion of vaccination shite. And so, why isn't that happening? And why isn't it a matter of course that people are told about this way of strengthening your immune system? It's because the pharmaceutical cartel gets its profits from weak immune systems. If we had a widespread, strong immune systems, then the profits of the pharmaceutical cartel, Big Pharma, would plummet. And just a little question: who is dismantling immune systems from the earliest age through vaccines? Big Pharma. And then they sell drugs to, quote, treat the problems that the weakened immune system allows to happen, but otherwise wouldn't. So, again, why aren't people being guided on how to increase their immune system effectiveness? And why aren't we just focusing all our resources and attention upon those that are vulnerable? Very, very small number comparatively are vulnerable because of their immune system being compromised. And another reason that old people's immune system is compromised, yes, it's age to an extent, but you can do something about that with these vitamins and other ways. But in large numbers of them, it means or comes from the fact that they eat toxic food because it's cheap and it's all they can afford. And all these other effects of poverty. Because we have this system that has people, if you're talking about the generations now, who have paid into the system all their lives in taxation and other ways. The oldest ones still around have fought in wars that the elite created. They've lost loved ones in those wars and have never recovered emotionally. And the system lets them play out their final years wondering if they should spend what little they have to keep warm or to spend it on food so they're not hungry. Now, what does anyone think that does to their immune system? And these are the people that this system has abused mercilessly, that same system is now saying it wants to is closing down the global economy to protect old people. Not only do they give and fire at old people, so much abuse and lack of empathy and compassion all the way through their final years. They are using them now as an excuse to transform the world economic system. There is not a word to describe them. Psychopath is as near as we can get, but it's not adequate.